Hey, before I start this story, I want you to take a deep breath. Because what I'm about to tell you, I have never said out loud to anyone, not to my best friend, not to my family, not even to my therapist. This is the story of one night, one room, one person who walked through my door and completely changed the way I understood myself, love, fear, and the meaning of silence. And I know what you're thinking, oh, it's just another hostile story. No, it's not. This story cracked something open inside me that I had spent 19 years keeping locked. And by the end of this video, I think you'll understand why I'm still, even now, sitting here with shaking hands trying to figure out how to tell it right. So get comfortable, make your tea, turn off your notifications. Because this one deserves your full attention. My name is Arian, and I grew up learning one thing better than anything else in school, better than math, better than English, better than any sport they ever made us play on that dusty ground in the afternoon sun. I learned how to disappear. Not literally, I was there every day. I sat in the third row. I answered questions when the teacher called my name. I ate lunch. I laughed at jokes. I walked home in a group of boys who talked about cricket and girls and movies. But the real me, the part of me that noticed things I wasn't supposed to notice, felt things I wasn't supposed to feel. That part of me had learned to go very, very quiet. I grew up in a small city in North India. I won't say which one because my family still lives there, and this story, if it ever reaches them, will be enough of a shock without me putting a pin in a map. It was the kind of city where everyone knew everyone, where your neighbor auntie knew what you ate for breakfast, where reputation was not just a word, it was a living, breathing thing that your entire family carried on their backs every single day. In that world, being different was not an option. And I was different. I knew it from the time I was maybe 8 or 9 years old. I didn't have the word for it then. I didn't know what gay meant in the way I understand it now. But I knew that when the other boys talked about actresses, I felt nothing. And I knew that when a certain kind of boy walked into the room, confident kind, the type who laughed easily, I felt something that I could not name and could not explain and absolutely could not show. So I buried it. I became the best version of a boy that world wanted me to be. I studied hard. I was respectful to elders. I cracked jokes with the guys. I even had a fake crush on a girl named Priya in ninth grade. I talked about her enough that people believed it, including sometimes myself. By the time I was 17, I was so good at pretending that I had almost forgotten what I was pretending about. Almost. When I got admission into an engineering college in Pune, my parents were overjoyed. First in my family to go to that city, first to go to that particular college. My mother cried. My father shook my hand, which, if you know Indian fathers, basically means he was internally doing cartwheels. I was terrified. Not because of the college, not because of the distance. I was terrified because for the first time in my life I was going to be living away from the walls I had built my hiding inside. I was going to be in a new city, a hostel, surrounded by strangers who didn't know the version of me I had spent years constructing. Part of me was excited by that, another part of me was absolutely petrified. I arrived in Pune on a humid July morning with 2 suitcases, a steel tiffin my mother packed even though I told her the hostel had a mess, and a phone full of her missed calls even before I had unpacked. The hostel was a 5-story building that smelled like damp cement and instant noodles. The warden was a short man with a very large mustache who gave me a key and a list of rules that he recited so fast I understood maybe 40% of them. And then he pointed me down a corridor to room 204. I pushed open the door. The room was small, 2 single beds, 2 desks, 1 window that looked out at a concrete wall, 1 ceiling fan that worked but made a sound like it was personally offended by the electricity running through it. And sitting on the bed on the right side, unpacking a bag with the focused calm of someone who had done this before, was my roommate. He looked up when I walked in. Hey, he said just that one word and smiled. His name was Kabir. Okay, I need to be careful here because I don't want this to become one of those stories where I describe someone like they're a film hero and you roll your eyes. So let me just tell you who Kabir actually was in the most honest way I can. He was tall, not absurdly so, but the kind of tall where he had to duck slightly under the hostel room doorframe and didn't seem to notice. He had dark hair that he never really styled, it just did whatever it wanted and somehow it always looked fine. He was from Chandigarh. He was studying mechanical engineering. He had a laugh that started quiet and then got louder like it surprised even him. But what made Kabir different from anyone I had ever shared a space with was this: he was genuinely, completely, almost aggressively comfortable with himself. He was straight. I knew this almost immediately, not from anything he said, just from the easy, uncomplicated way he moved through the world. He talked about girls the way boys did. He had an ex-girlfriend back home that he mentioned occasionally, never with bitterness, just with the settled energy of someone who had closed a chapter and was okay with it. And he was kind, not performatively kind, not kind because he wanted something, just kind, the way some people are warm, the way some rooms are warm, not because they're trying, just because that's what they are. Within a week, we had fallen into a rhythm. He stayed up late, I woke up early. He cooked Maggie at midnight, I made tea at 6 in the morning. He talked a lot, I listened more. He left his clothes everywhere, I had a mild internal crisis about it but said nothing. We were, by all appearances, just two boys sharing a room the way thousands of boys share rooms in hostels across India every single year. But here is the thing about walls: the things you build them to keep out, they have a habit of finding the cracks. The first crack happened about 3 weeks in. It was a Sunday. Most of the hostel had gone home for a long weekend, some festival, I don't even remember which one now. My family was too far, and honestly I had told my parents not to expect me home every holiday because the travel was expensive. Kabir's family was in Chandigarh, also a long way, and he had stayed back too. So it was just the two of us in a very quiet hostel. We spent the morning doing nothing in particular. He was watching something on his laptop. I was reading, or pretending to read. Actually, I was very aware of how quiet and closed the room felt. In the afternoon, he suddenly said, "Let's go out, I'm going crazy in here." We took a bus to a part of Pune neither of us had explored yet and just walked around for 3 hours. We found a small tea stall run by an old man who charged us 12 rupees for the best cutting chai I have ever had in my life. We sat on a low wall by the road and watched the city move. And Kabir started talking. Not about anything big, just life, his family, his father who wanted him to be an engineer but had never told him why. His mother who called him every single morning at 7 a.m. and talked for exactly 22 minutes, which he timed once as a joke and then felt guilty about. His older sister who was getting married and how he was happy for her but also quietly terrified because she was his best friend and marriage felt like losing her to another household. He talked the way some people talk when they haven't had anyone to really talk to in a while. And I listened, really listened, not the way I usually listened, half present, half monitoring myself, making sure I said the right things and felt the right amounts. I just listened. At some point, the sun started going down and the sky turned that particular shade of orange-pink that happens in Indian cities, dusty and beautiful at the same time. And Kabir went quiet for a moment, just looking at it. Then he said, "This is nice." Just that. And something in my chest did a thing I hadn't felt in a very long time, a kind of warmth, a kind of ache, a kind of oh. I looked at the sky so he couldn't see my face. "Yeah," I said, "it is." After that Sunday, something shifted between us. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't sudden. It was the way friendships deepen, slowly, then all at once, so gradually you can't point to the moment it happened. We started actually talking. Not just coexisting in a room, but talking about real things, complicated things, funny things, sad things. He told me about a time in school when he failed an exam and hid the paper from his parents for a month, sneaking it back into his bag every morning so they wouldn't find it. I told him about the time I pretended to have a stomach ache for a week to avoid a school cricket match, only to have my mother take me to 3 different doctors. We laughed a lot. He had this habit, when something genuinely struck him as funny, really funny, not polite laugh funny, he would tilt his head back slightly and close his eyes for just a second, like he needed to absorb the humor before he could release it. I noticed that habit somewhere around the 4th week and then could not stop noticing it. I noticed a lot of things about Kabir that I told myself I was noticing, the way you notice anything about someone you spend a lot of time with. The specific way he frowned at his laptop when the internet was slow. The fact that he always made his bed in the morning even though no one made him. The way he got quieter on days he was tired versus days he was sad. There was a difference, a subtle one, but I learned it. This is the thing about closeness that no one tells you: it is an act of memorization. To be close to someone is to learn them, their rhythms and patterns and silences, the specific vocabulary of who they are. And I was learning Kabir in a way that I understood. Somewhere beneath the part of me that was still performing normalcy was more than just friendship. I did not let myself think about this directly. I kept it in my peripheral vision, aware but not examined. If I looked at it straight on, I would have to do something with it, and I was not ready to do something with it. So I just kept going, lived in the room, made the tea, had the conversations, laughed at the right moments. And slowly, quietly, fell completely and helplessly in something I was terrified to name. It was a Tuesday in November. I remember it was Tuesday because we had a particularly brutal fluid mechanics class that afternoon, and we had come back to the room exhausted and a little defeated. Kabir had flopped on his bed and I had flopped on mine, and we had both stared at the ceiling fan, still making its offended noise, in companionable silence. Around midnight, I had fallen asleep over my textbook. Kabir had gone out to the common room to watch a match with some other guys from the floor. I don't know what time it was when I woke up. Very late. The hostel was quiet. The kind of quiet that only happens in large buildings full of sleeping people, not silent but still. Someone's phone alarm going off and being silenced down the hall, the faraway sound of a train. I was awake and couldn't go back to sleep. This happened sometimes. My brain would surface from sleep and immediately start running, cataloging all the things I was anxious about, all the things I hadn't dealt with. The exam next week. The assignment I hadn't started. My mother's voice on the phone that afternoon asking if I was eating, and underneath that question the real question she never asked. Are you okay? Are you really okay? I was sitting up in the dark, phone in hand, not really doing anything with it when the door opened. Kabir came in quietly, clearly trying not to wake me. He didn't turn the lights on. In the dim orange glow of the corridor light that came through the gap under the door, I could see he was still in his day clothes. He must have fallen asleep in the common room and just come back. Hey, I said, and he startled slightly. Oh, you're awake, sorry, did I wake you? Number couldn't sleep. He sat down on his bed, in the dark, and neither of us said anything for a moment. Then he said, you okay? And this is the moment. This is the exact moment I have replayed more times than I can count. Because the correct answer, the safe answer, was yeah, fine, just couldn't sleep. That was the answer I had given 1,000 times before to 1,000 different people in 1,000 different situations. The answer that kept the wall intact. But it was very dark and very quiet, and something about the exhaustion of that day, that month, that year, that life, reached up inside me and wrapped around that safe answer and stopped it from coming out. Instead, what came out was, I don't know. Kabir was quiet for a moment, then, yeah, me neither sometimes. And then we were both just sitting there in the dark, on our separate beds, in that small room with its one offended fan and its concrete wall view, and I don't know what possessed me, the hour, the dark, the accumulated weight of 19 years of keeping myself hidden, but I said, can I tell you something? He said, yeah, of course. And my heart was beating so hard I could feel it in my throat. I had never done this, not once, not with anyone, but something about Kabir, the way he had talked to me for months. The way he had never once made me feel like my feelings were too much or not enough. The way he just listened, something about him made me feel like maybe, just maybe, this room was safe enough. I've never told anyone this, I said. My voice was steady. I don't know how. Not a single person in my life. Kabir didn't say anything, he just waited. I'm gay. I want to tell you about that silence, because it was the longest and most important silence of my life. It lasted maybe 4 seconds, probably less, but time does something strange in moments like that. It expands, fills itself up with every possible version of what could happen next. In those 4 seconds I lived through 50 different futures. Futures where he laughed, futures where he got up and left, futures where he looked at me differently from that moment on, the particular kind of different where someone who is a person to you becomes a thing to be managed. I had spent 19 years protecting myself from those futures. And then Kabir said, okay. Just that. Okay. And then, thanks for telling me. I didn't say anything. I think I might have exhaled. I think my hands might have been shaking. He said, that must have been really hard to carry around. And that was when something broke inside me, not in a bad way, in the way a fever breaks, in the way a knot in your shoulder finally releases under the right pressure, something that had been held rigid for so long it had started to feel structural, like if it let go I would collapse. Just let go. I didn't cry, actually. I thought I might, but I didn't. I just sat there feeling strangely light, like a room that's been closed for years and someone finally opened a window. We talked for a long time after that, not about heavy things, not at first. He asked me when I had known, and I told him the truth that I had known for a long time but hadn't had the word for it. He asked if anyone else knew, and I said no. He didn't push. He didn't ask a million questions like I was a curiosity. He just listened, and when I finished talking, he said, "I'm glad you told me." Then he said something that I want to tell you, because it mattered more than he probably knew. "You're still the same guy you were 5 minutes ago, like nothing about our friendship changes, nothing about how I see you changes. This is just more of you that I know now." More of you that I know now. I have thought about those words so many times since then. In the months that followed, when I was still figuring out what it meant to be out to even one person. In the harder moments, when the world felt less kind than that dark, quiet, hostile room, I have held those words up like a small flashlight in a dark corridor. More of you that I know now. I need to be honest with you, it wasn't all suddenly easy after that night. The next morning, I woke up with the specific terror of someone who has said a thing they cannot unsay. Kabir's bed was empty, he had early classes on Wednesdays, and I lay there for about 20 minutes running through every possible version of what have I done. What if he told someone? What if he was weird about it now? What if our friendship, this thing that had become, in a few short months, one of the most real and important things in my life, what if it was now permanently altered? I went to class in a fog. But when I came back to the room that evening, Kabir was sitting at his desk, earphones on, music too loud in the way it always was, and he looked up when I came in and said, "Yar, have you eaten? I got extra from the mess, it's on your desk." He had got me food. That was it, that was the whole thing. He had got me food the way he sometimes got me food, the way you do for a roommate, the way you do for a friend, no different than before. Normal. I sat down and ate, and he complained about his thermodynamics assignment, and I helped him with one section, and he explained a concept from the other class that I had missed, and by the end of the evening it was just us. Room 204, the offended fan. The same, just with more honesty between us than before. I won't tell you that the walls I had built for 19 years came down overnight. They didn't, that's not how it works. I didn't walk out into the campus the next day and announce myself. I didn't suddenly feel free from all the weight. The fears were still there. The habits of hiding were still there. But there was something new too. A small space, one room, one person where I didn't have to perform, where I could just exist. You don't know how much that matters until you have it. And then once you have it, you understand bone deep what it cost you to not have it for so long. Here is where I have to tell you the harder part of this story. Because I said I fell for Kabir, and I did. I told you that in the beginning, and I'm not going to pretend it was just friendship. There was more to it than that, on my side, even if it was never something I could ever act on, never something I wanted to force into the space between us and damage what we had. After I came out to him, those feelings got both better and worse at the same time. Better because at least now I wasn't performing numbness. I could acknowledge to myself that I cared about him deeply, that he meant something to me, that the warmth I felt around him was real and not something to be ashamed of. Worse because those feelings had nowhere to go. He was straight. He was my friend. The closest friend I had in that city, in that new life. And whatever I felt beyond friendship, I knew with a clarity that was painful but also freeing in its own way that it was mine to carry, not his to solve. This is something I don't see talked about enough in LGBTQ spaces, the experience of falling for a straight friend. It is so specific and so complicated. It is not predatory, I want to be very clear about that. I never acted on it. I never put him in a position where he had to navigate it. I valued his comfort and his trust more than I valued the expression of my own feelings. But it was also not simple. It was not just a crush you get over in a week. It was a person I lived with and trusted and had come out to, and being around him was both a joy and a quiet, consistent ache. I dealt with it the way I had dealt with everything in my life. I sat with it. I felt it fully in private. I didn't let it make me bitter or strange or resentful, and over time, not quickly, not painlessly, it evolved. The sharp edge of it softened. What remained was something I can only describe as deep, uncomplicated love of the kind that doesn't need anything in return. The kind that exists purely because it exists. Kabir never knew the full extent of how I felt. I made sure of that, not out of shame but out of love. Some feelings, when you care enough about the person, you choose to keep inside because their peace matters more than your expression. I am at peace with that choice. The rest of that year at the hostel passed in the strange doubled way that significant years do, both fast and slow, both ordinary and unforgettable. I came out to two other people that year, both of them from our friend group. Both of them received it with a casualness that I think is the best possible response to someone coming out, treating it as information that matters but doesn't require making the person feel like they've confessed something scandalous. One of them said, "Oh, okay, makes sense actually," which is maybe not the most emotionally resonant response, but which made me laugh so hard I had to sit down. I didn't come out to my family that year. I'm still not fully out to my family now. This is its own long story, its own complicated relationship with love and fear and the particular gravity of where I come from. I'll tell that story another time, maybe, when I've had more time to sit with it. But I want to tell you this, coming out to Kabir in that dark room was the first stone removed from a wall that I had thought was permanent. It didn't knock the whole wall down in one night, but it showed me the wall could be unmade. Stone by stone, person by person, room by room. And that was everything. Second year of college, the hostel room assignments changed. Kabir got moved to a different room with a different roommate, someone from his department. I was paired with a guy from Maharashtra who was very quiet and very tidy and had an enormous collection of succulents which he tended to every morning with a devotion I found genuinely moving. The proximity changed as proximity does. We still talked. We still met for tea at the stall near the gate that had become our place. We still had the ease of two people who have shared a small space and come out of it still liking each other. But it was different. Of course it was different. The particular intimacy of sharing a room, falling asleep in it, waking up in it, being your most unguarded self in it, because that's what small shared spaces demand, that was specific to that year, those months, that room. In our final year, Kabir got placed at a company in Bangalore. I got into a campus placement in Pune itself. The day he left, he came to my room with his last bag, the big one, the one his mother's missed calls lived inside, and stood at the door and said, "I'm going to miss this building, I don't know why." I said, "I'm going to miss the fan." He laughed, the head tilt kind, eyes closed for a moment. Then he hugged me, and I hugged him back. And neither of us did the awkward thing of making it too short, the way Indian men in my world were taught to make physical affection, a quick, shoulder-heavy thing with a lot of back patting to signal that it didn't mean too much. We just hugged like two people who had meant something real to each other and were now going to be farther apart. When he pulled back, he said, "You know you're going to be okay, right?" I looked at him. He said, "Like in general, in life, you know that." I didn't know how to answer that, so I just said, "Yeah." He nodded, "Good, because you are." And then he left. His cab was waiting. The hallway ate him up one corridor at a time until he was gone. I went back to my room and sat on my bed and thought about a lot of things. About the 19 years before that hostel. About the dark Tuesday midnight that changed something in me. About how it is possible to love someone in whatever form love takes without it being about possession, without it being about getting something back, without it being anything other than a true and honest recognition of another person's worth. About how being seen, even once, even by one person in the dark in a small room with a loud fan, how that can be enough to carry you forward. I am recording this in my apartment in Pune. I live alone now. I have a job I mostly like. I have friends, some of whom know who I am fully, some of whom know parts of me. I am still in many ways a work in progress, aren't we all? But I want to talk to you, specifically to the person who clicked on this video because some part of them recognized something in the title. The person who has a wall they have been keeping up for a very long time. The person who is living in a small room somewhere with a version of themselves they have kept quiet for so long the quiet has started to feel normal. Here is what I want to say to you. The wall will not protect you forever. Walls that start as protection become prisons, not because you are weak, not because you chose wrong, but because you were never meant to live only inside a structure you built to survive. You were meant to actually live. You do not have to come out to everyone, you do not have to make an announcement, you do not have to be ready for all of it at once. But find one room, one person, one moment of dark and quiet where you can say the thing you have been carrying. Because the other side of that sentence, the world after you say the true thing out loud to someone who receives it well, it is not perfect, but it is lighter. It is so much lighter than what you have been holding. Kabir is still in Bangalore. We talk sometimes, not enough, the way it always is with people who mattered in a particular chapter of life and whose lives have moved into different chapters now. But when we talk, it is with the ease of two people who once shared a small space and chose in that space to be honest. I don't know if he thinks much about that Tuesday night. It may have been a small moment for him, a roommate's confession, handled with grace, filed away. For me, it was the beginning of a different kind of life. That's okay, that's how it works sometimes. Some people change your life without fully knowing they've done it. Some people are a door, not a destination. Kabir was my door. I am very grateful for him. Thank you for watching this. I know this was long and maybe heavy and maybe not what you expected from a thumbnail with a shocked emoji. But I promised you the real story, and this was the real story. If anything I said today resonated with you, if you're someone who's been keeping a part of yourself very quiet for a very long time, I just want you to know you are not alone. You have never been alone. The loneliness is a lie the hiding tells you. On the other side of the truth, there are people, good ones, more than you think. If you want to share your own story in the comments, a coming out moment, a person who was your door, a room that felt safe, please do. This space is yours as much as it is mine. Like this video if it meant something to you, subscribe if you want more stories like this because I have more. Not all of them are happy, not all of them are heavy, all of them are true. And until the next one, be honest with someone today, even just yourself. Take care of yourselves, I'll see you soon.